Hi, I'm Dwayne Gundrum. Now, you may have been watching some of my podcasts before, listening to my podcast before, and kind of came over to the video side of the house, which is something that's kind of new to me. And you may be wondering, who am I? Or you may know me already and just kind of be a little more curious about it. Or you're just somebody that's got nothing better to do, so you're going to sit here and listen to this person blather on information that you don't really care about. So whichever direction you come from, let me just give you a little background of where I come from. I was around a little before the internet. You might say I was one of the first adopters of it. I'm not Al Gore, I didn't invent it, but I was definitely one of the early people who really got into this thing, proto ARPANET kind of time. And so at the very beginning, I got my start on the internet by creating web pages did it for a couple of churches in the very beginning, and found out really quickly nobody else was actually doing it. And so a couple other people hired me, got references from others, and next thing I knew, I was doing about 100 different websites. This is before we even had desktop publishing. It was a really interesting time, and so I continued that for a while until I had way more clients than I ever wanted or needed. And so I started distancing myself from that. Before that, I was actually a game designer. I created a game called Prisoners of Xanth. This is back in the old, two-color era of computers. And so it was one of those, more of a D&D kind of a game before we actually had the ability to put all that kind of stuff together into a game. So the idea was you started off as a soldier in Vietnam, and you found this strange group of people that was in Vietnam that actually led you to a tunnel system where all of this evil was actually taking place, and it was a lot of fun, and the game was enjoyable. It sold really, really well. Of course, back then when you were selling games, you weren't selling them in stores. You were putting them in little baggies and then, pretty much offering them to your friends, and they would pay you a couple of bucks for them. And then a whole bunch of other people started getting a hold of them and wanting to play it, and so they'd buy it, and of course, a bunch of them were basically ripping you off completely by just making copies of it and giving it off to everybody else. But that's kind of how the business was back then. And I created a Strategic Air Command, which was probably one of my more fun games that I did. Well, actually, the first game was a lot of fun. And then I started doing a whole lot of kind of mod D&D kind of games before, the whole industry kind of took off. I worked for Maxis, SimCity, The Sims. Last project I was working on was actually The Sims. And worked for Electronic Arts. I know, the evil big bad company, Electronic Arts. Then I went back to school and started doing other things and just kind of left it. So I went into political science because I thought that was a fun thing to get a degree in. Not a really great decision, but anyway, found out what I was actually researching couldn't be researched through political science. So after I did my PhD work, I decided I was going to go into communication. Learned a whole bunch of stuff on communication. Now I actually teach communication. I'm a community college professor. I enjoy it, and that's pretty much all I do. So if you're looking for more information on me, those are some of the bigger things I've done. I am a writer. I'm a published author. I got published 30-something years ago. Yeah, it shows how old I am. And my first novel was Innocent Until Proven Guilty. I've published 13 novels, probably written 70. You just keep writing, and not all of them are actually meant to actually be sold. And currently working on right now called Return to Camelot. I do a lot of writing. I've done a lot of mentoring for people who are writing. Take them under my wing, kind of teach them all the different things they can do. And sadly enough, some of them have done much better than I've ever done. But I can say that I was there to help them along the line, or help them along the way and get them where they're going. So I guess that's a good thing, right? Anyway, so what I'm planning to do with this series of videos, or in future videos, is I like to give you a little bit about my political philosophy, which is pretty strange if you actually think about it. Well, you will once you actually hear it, but that won't actually be today. I'll talk a little bit about computer games, kind of like the old industry, kind of where it's gone into the future, or where it's going into the future. I wish I could tell you the actual future. And then I'll tell you, I'll also do a lot on writing itself. I did a series of podcasts a long time ago, which was all about the process of writing, because one thing I've always found really fascinating is being able to get other people into the industry to do that sort of thing, because I think everybody's got a story, and it's really great when you can actually offer them the opportunity to tell their story. Other than that, that's probably kind of the main things I'll be covering. Thank you for joining my video cast, or whatever they're calling it so far, what the kids are calling it. Anyway, so hopefully we'll have some fun. You will find I have a quirky sense of humor where, like, a lot of my students sometimes can't figure out that I'm actually telling jokes, which doesn't mean they're bad jokes. It just means sometimes they go over people's heads and I really don't care. And I'll just keep spewing them out until people start to figure it out. You get those 2 or 3 people in the class that are like, I totally see what you're doing. And the other ones are kind of going, what do you say? Anyway, so have fun. Welcome to my cast, and hopefully it'll be interesting. Thank you.